Weighing in at 70 tons and armed with a 120-millimeter cannon, the M1 Abrams battle tank has long been the iron fist of America's ground forces. And now it's heading to Ukraine. After weeks of debate, 3 U.S. defense officials tell NBC News the White House will send several dozen American tanks to Ukraine's military. A shift from last week when officials said the Abrams, which runs on jet fuel, was too difficult for Ukraine to maintain. Today's decision made in coordination with NATO allies Germany and Poland, who are now expected to send their own Leopard tanks to Ukraine, according to European media reports. The heavy armor, an answer to Ukraine's longtime plea. And Tom, those several dozen American tanks will be a formidable fighting force, but it's not clear when they're actually going to reach the battlefield. The real power of this decision is it gives political cover for Germany and other NATO allies to send their Leopard tanks to Ukraine. And there are about 2,000 of those in Europe already that could be on the battlefield soon.
Tonight, the U.S. Coast Guard carefully monitoring this Russian ship prowling the waters off of the Hawaiian Islands. And not just any ship, a vessel the Coast Guard says is believed to be an intelligence-gathering ship, a spy ship.
Ships loitering in an area is abnormal. And with this one being a Russian vessel off one of our key naval harbors in the Pacific, that will be of concern to the naval leadership.
Indeed, Joint Base Pearl Harbor is one of the Navy's busiest, with some of the most sophisticated and secret warships in its arsenal. It's where we boarded a boat that took us to a nuclear-armed ballistic missile submarine last year off Hawaii's coast. The submarines do not like to stay above water for long because then they are detectable. Exactly the kind of submarine the Russians could try to learn more about by dropping a tracking device underwater. But there is another possibility: sabotage.
They could be mapping some of our critical infrastructure that comes in and out of Hawaii, fiber optic internet and communication cables, for example.
The Russians have a right to be in international waters, but making the concern public lets the Russians know we're carefully watching. And David, the Coast Guard tells me that the Russian vessel has been moving anywhere from 100 miles off the Hawaiian coast to close enough to shore where you can see it with binoculars. David?
The United States and Israel are holding their most significant military exercises to date. Close to 7,000 military personnel, 142 aircraft and ships are participating in what is amongst the biggest U.S.-Israel war games to date. And there is a clear message to Iran amid growing tensions over its nuclear program. U.S. officials say the drills titled Juniper Oak are meant to demonstrate and deepen integration between the U.S. and Israeli militaries. Analysts say the message to Tehran is clear, though U.S. officials claim there would be no mock-ups of Iranian targets and that the exercises aren't oriented around a particular adversary. The exercises include live fire drills involving 6,400 U.S. forces. Most of the troops will be aboard the U.S. aircraft carrier George H.W. Bush strike group and around 450 troops on the ground in Israel. The U.S. aircraft will include F-355, F-155, F-16s and F-18s. According to an official, the drills will take place over large distances involving land, sea and space. Earlier, Israel opposed U.S. President Joe Biden's attempts to revive the Iran nuclear deal. Israel says any deal would not stop Tehran's development of a nuclear weapon. The U.S. says its commitment to Israeli security is ironclad.
Now, days after the European Parliament approved a resolution calling on the bloc to consider a terrorist designation for Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, Tehran says it is planning to designate the armed forces of the EU states as terrorists. Iranian President Ebrahim Raisi has warned the EU and said that Iran would take reciprocal measures and that this act will increase the gaps between countries. Officials have also retaliated and said that Iran will put European forces in the Persian Gulf on the terrorist list. While calling the vote against the IRGC, the European Parliament blamed the force for the repression of protesters in Iran and the supply of drones to Russia. Though the vote is non-binding, but comes with EU foreign ministers already due to discuss tightening sanctions on the Islamic Republic next week. The move received massive condemnation from Iran, even though the head of Iran's Revolutionary Guard said that he was not concerned. Iran, however, warned that the European Union would pay the full price if it designated the Revolutionary Guard Corps as a terrorist entity. In a tweet, Iran's foreign minister says that he attended a closed session of parliament along with the IRGC chief, where they discussed the plan to designate EU armed forces as terrorists. He also said the European Parliament had shot itself in the foot by approving the resolution against Iranian forces.